Welcome to our Automate Complex Work with AI Agents DevCon 26 workshop. My name is Isa Harold, and I am a technical instructor at Appian. Today, I'm very excited to be teaching you all how to supercharge process automation by adding flexible AI-powered steps directly into your Appian process models. We'll begin today with an introduction to Appian's AI agents and learn about our use case for our workshop. Then we'll work on the build together, following steps outlined in an exercise guide that I'll be providing to you very shortly. At the end of the build, we'll recap what we've learned, and I'll provide you with resources that you can use to continue your learning journey. As we work through our build, we'll be diving into some new and exciting Appian features. To ensure that we have enough time to get through all of our content today, I won't be able to stop for questions. However, if you did miss a step or you have a question mid-build, please do raise your hand, and one of our friendly Appian experts in the room will come over and help. Could our in-room experts please wave? Awesome. Thank you all so much. Let's get into it. Appian's AI agents automate complex goal-driven processes. They're executed from a process model, which provides structure, control, and governance to the agent. The process model also defines the agent's role in a larger process, facilitating the outcomes of its work, as well as seamlessly orchestrating that work with other automation tools, including other AI agents. Appian's AI agents are not constrained by a predefined workflow to determine the actions they take or the order in which they take those actions. Instead, they use tools like record types and documents and process models to make dynamic, context-aware decisions across your applications and take action to drive value. AI agents are created and managed in Appian Designer. To create an agent, you provide it with instructions that detail what its goal is, tools it can use to take steps to achieve that goal, inputs that the agent will evaluate as it processes its workflow, and outputs that will be returned to the process model after the agent completes. The tools we'll be adding to our agent today are design objects that already exist in our application. Soon, you'll also be able to add external tools that enable your AI agent to connect with enterprise systems and unlock powerful new automation possibilities. Keep an eye out for demonstrations of these features at some of our other Appian World events. Next, let's learn about our use case. NextGen is a global order fulfillment company that currently has a very manual process of provisioning new hardware for their employees. For every single new employee, HR specialists must manually cross-reference multiple documents and systems to find information including the employee's role, the standard hardware package for that role, whether that hardware package aligns with company policies, special requests submitted by the employee, special projects the employee might be staffed on that have specialized hardware requirements, and current inventory levels. Then they have to take action to reserve that package that they recommend or escalate the case to a supervisor as needed. The current process is very error-prone and often results in incorrect and out-of-policy packages being provisioned. And so, NextGen is committed to modernizing and automating this process. They've decided to use Appian's AI agents to handle this highly complex workflow across all of NextGen's departments and regions. We'll begin our build for NextGen by creating a new AI agent. Then we'll test and monitor the agent. At the end, we'll put it all together by adding our agent to a process model. Let's get into the build. So we should all be logged into our training environment already. Once you log into that environment, if you hadn't already gotten a workspace on this environment, you should have seen a button labeled Get My Workspace. If you haven't already clicked on that, go ahead and click on it, and then navigate to Appian Designer. Once you're in Appian Designer, you should see a list of pre-built applications that exist in your personal workspace. You'll notice a unique workspace identifier at the beginning of all of these application names. Mine are 07 and 111. You should only have one workspace ID for your view. The application that we'll be working with today is the IT hardware provisioning application. So as you work with existing objects and create new objects during our build, make sure that you're referencing that unique workspace identifier for your application. Before we start building, I'd like to provide you with that exercise guide that I mentioned. You can open that up by going to the waffle menu in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, clicking on it, and then finding the exercise guides item towards the bottom of that list. Open that up, and then select the AI Agents option to download a PDF version of the exercise guide to your computer. You will need to reference this exercise guide throughout the build. If you haven't already done so, you can find it by going to the navigation menu, selecting exercise guides. We'll be referencing this multiple times and copying and pasting some information from the guide into our build. If you want, in that exercise guide, you can go ahead and scroll to page 3. This is where we'll begin our exercise. Let's all meet back in Appian Designer and go ahead and open that IT hardware provisioning application. Here you'll see that there are several pre-built objects that exist in this app. We'll be referencing a few of these as well as editing one of them a little later on. We're going to start by creating a new AI agent. An AI agent is a design object that uses tools to analyze and reason through complex steps, make decisions, and take action automatically. You can find the button to create a new object at the top of your objects list. Click on that and select the option for AI agent, conveniently the first option. From here, we'll name our object and provide a description. If you want, you can copy and paste these details from page 3 of your exercise guide. The name of this agent will be Provision IT Package. This agent will take on some of that HR specialist work to analyze an employee's role, standard hardware package, and try to make a decision about that package. Once you have that name and description in there, go ahead and click on Create. This will take you to the security configuration for your agent. We don't need to change anything there, so once you've reviewed it, go ahead and click on Save. And this will open a new tab with Agent Designer. We'll start by providing instructions to this agent. I'm not going to have you guys type out all these instructions from scratch. Please go ahead and copy and paste these from pages 4 and 5 of the exercise guide. I do recommend doing this in 2 parts. Otherwise, you'll copy the footer from the bottom of the PDF. Starting on page 4, I'm going to grab the first half of these instructions. And then the second half at the top of page 5. These instructions tell the agent that it should use input provided by a process model to look up an employee's role, find the standard hardware package for that role, analyze company policy to determine if anything is out of policy, and escalate the onboarding case if needed. You might notice that these instructions are written in Markdown format. This means that we can click on the Preview tab to view them in a more easy-to-understand format. Once you have those instructions in there, go ahead and click Save, and we'll move on to configuring tools for this agent. Find the Tools section in Agent Designer by scrolling down on the left-hand side of your screen. There are several different types of tools that we can add to our agent that enable it to do various things. The first type of tool we'll add is a document tool. So go ahead and click Add, and we'll actually be selecting the document folder option. So you have document tool or document folder. Let's select document folder, and then use your IT prefix to search for the IT onboarding and policy documents folder, and select it. This folder contains 3 documents: job requisitions for NextGen, company IT procurement policy, and regional data compliance policies. Once you have that tool selected, click Add. The next type of tool we'll be adding is a record type tool. We'll be adding 2 of these. If you're following along in the exercise guide, the names of these tools can be found on page 6. So once again, click Add, and this time select record type. The first record type tool we'll add is the IT employee tool. Make sure you're searching with that IT prefix. Once you have that record type selected, you'll be able to review the attributes that exist on that record type object that our agent will be able to access if it chooses to use this tool. Click Add and do this once more for the IT hardware catalog record type. The next type of tool we'll add is an expression rule tool. These enable your agent to execute a specific piece of expression code. We'll be adding 3 of these. Again, these names are all listed on page 6 of your exercise guide. The first one I'll add is get equipment standards for role. So you can search for this with your IT prefix, then underscore, and then start typing get equipment, and select the get equipment standards for role option. I'll do this 2 more times. The next expression rule I'm adding is going to retrieve the current hardware inventory for a list of hardware. So this is labeled IT get inventory by hardware ID list. And click Add. The final expression rule tool we'll add is called Get Specialized Project Requirements. A list of all of these tools can be seen on page 7 of your exercise guide if you want to make sure you have all 6 that we've added so far in there. As you've been adding these tools, you might have noticed that they're all specific and don't overlap with each other. Each tool that you should add should do one thing and do it well. Also notice that all of our tools have clear and meaningful names and descriptions. And for our expression rule tools, the rule inputs also have clear and meaningful names and descriptions. This best practice is essential to ensuring that your agent can make the right decisions as it processes its workflow. So we should all have 6 tools in there. We're going to add 3 more. The next type is a process model tool, enabling our agent to execute a process model if needed. So go ahead and click Add, and this time select Process Model. The first process model tool we'll add is the IT create or update onboarding. Add that one. And the second process model is the IT reserve hardware inventory process model. The final tool we'll add to this agent is another AI agent. You can create multiple AI agents that each handle a specific part of a complex workflow and work together to achieve a larger goal. The scenario we'll be taking care of is when our provision IT package agent decides to escalate an onboarding case. Eventually, a human supervisor will have to review that escalated case. But before we get there, this agent will call a secondary agent to perform some additional processing work. This secondary agent will provide human-like judgment to assess the context of the case and use reasoning to come up with a recommended hardware package that is policy compliant. As part of this work, it will use a query with Smart Search enabled to find semantically similar historical onboarding cases to augment its reasoning. This agent has already been built for us, so we can add it the same way we added all of our other tools. By clicking Add, selecting AI Agent, and searching for the IT_supervisor review agent. And adding it. You should have a total of 9 tools in total. You can see that number in your Tools tab. Go ahead and save your agent, and we'll move on to the rest of our configuration. I have a question over here, I think. We'll move on to configuring inputs for this agent. Inputs are key pieces of data that are passed from other parts of the application to our agent that the AI agent will then take into consideration when it's processing its workflow. We'll be adding one input to this agent. So let's all move over to the Inputs tab and select Add. When we are naming both inputs and outputs, both spelling and capitalization are important. They will come into play when we add this to a process model. So you can either type this out with me or copy and paste this from page 9 in your exercise guide. This will be named onboarding case. And this is the onboarding case for a new employee. The type of this input is the IT onboarding record type. So in input type, go ahead and search for that record by using your IT prefix and selecting onboarding. This input is required. So go ahead and select that checkbox, and then you can save this input. This is what your input section should look like once you've added it. And we can move on to configuring the outputs. So click into that Outputs tab. We'll be adding 3 outputs for our agent that will be returned to a process model after this agent completes. The first output we'll add is similar to the input we just added. It's named the same, onboarding case. Once again, spelling and capitalization is important. You can always copy and paste from the second half of page 9 in your guide. This is the updated onboarding case for an employee. Its type is, once again, that IT onboarding record. And this output is required, indicating to the agent that once it completes its execution, it must populate a value for this output. Once you've added that output, click Save. Next, we'll add 2 more outputs that handle our escalation scenario. Yes, it is required. The first output that we'll add to handle the escalation scenario is a Boolean flag that will be passed to the process model, helping it determine whether it should escalate this to a human supervisor or not. Click Add. Our name for this will be Escalate to Supervisor. You can copy and paste this from page 10 in the guide. This is whether the onboarding requires manual review by a supervisor. For the type, search for Boolean. And this is also required. Save that output. 1 more to go. Click Add one last time. The name of this is Escalation Justification. Copying the description from the guide. If our agent chooses to escalate this onboarding case, it will then populate this output with an explanation of why the onboarding case was escalated. This will then be used by our human supervisor to make sure that they have enough context to make their final decision. The type of this output is text, and it is not required, because if the case doesn't get escalated, then there is no need to justify it. Click Save. You should have 3 outputs configured for your agent. Let's go ahead and save this AI agent. We can now test our agent. Testing allows you to iterate and improve on your agent by validating that it does what you expect it to do. You can validate the instructions, tool interactions, inputs, and outputs in a controlled environment before you integrate this AI agent with the rest of your application. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see an expression editor for that one input we defined. We'll be using an expression rule, get onboarding case by ID, to pass data to this input. So go ahead and clear out the value in your expression editor and call your expression rule using rule bang, type that IT prefix, underscore, and then get onboarding case by ID. And you can use the autocomplete to select that expression rule. The ID that we'll all be using is 120. This is the onboarding case ID for Amanda Thompson, who is a sales associate based in Montreal. You can use that preview below the expression editor to see that input before you go ahead and click Test. Depending on the complexity of your agent and the input you provide to that agent, processing times may vary. Also, keep in mind that generative AI is non-deterministic. So even though we're all providing the same input to the same agent, we may see slightly different outputs. We don't have time in our workshop to stick around and wait for this to finish because we have a lot to get through, but I'd like to direct your attention up to my screen where I will show an example of a completed agent run. When you're in Agent Designer, you can navigate to the monitor view by clicking on the monitor tab in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. From here, you can see all of the agent runs within a period of time and click on the run ID to drill into a specific run. So this completed agent run executed 13 steps in total. For each step, I can see the tool it chose to execute, and I can also expand the details of a specific step to see information such as why the agent chose to execute that tool, the inputs it provided to that tool, and the outputs returned from that tool, which will then be used to determine the next step in the workflow. We're now going to move on to adding our AI agent to a process model. After the workshop, if you want to check on that test run, you can always come to this monitor view and drill into that run. Before we move on, we will need to extract something from our agent that tells the process model which agent it should be executing. This can be found in the properties of the agent. You can navigate to that using the gear icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen and selecting Properties. What we're looking for is the universally unique identifier, or the UUID, for this AI agent. Go ahead and copy that into your clipboard or into a text editor. We'll need to reference it in a few moments. You can keep this tab open, but now we're all going to meet in our all objects list within our application. The process model we'll be editing has mostly been configured for us. Its name is provision hardware package. You should see that towards the top of your objects list. If you're having trouble locating it, you can scroll down and filter by process model. And once you've found the provision hardware package process model, go ahead and click on that. If you're following along in the exercise guide, we're now on page 14. This process model's workflow has already been created for us. All we have to do is edit 2 process model nodes to integrate our AI agent. There have also already been several process variables created for us that we'll use to provide inputs and outputs for these 2 nodes. We'll start by editing the execute AI agent smart service node to integrate our agent we just created. Go ahead and click on that node, double click on it to open up the configuration. Then navigate to the data tab, and we'll start with the inputs. The first input that we'll configure is that agent UUID. So let's all click on that agent UUID name, then move over to the right side of our screen to edit the value configuration as an expression by clicking on that blue pencil. Here, we'll want to replace the placeholder text inside of those double quotes with that UUID we just copied. If you delete those double quotes, no worries. You can just add them back. Once you have that expression in there, you can click Save and Close. We got a question over here. Second row. We got another question over here. We can now move on to providing inputs to the agent. These inputs will be determined by the inputs we configured within that AI agent object. They'll be provided to this node with a map. So click on Agent Inputs, and then configure the value as an expression. This is where we'll put our spelling and capitalization of those inputs to the test. So you can always go back to your AI agent and double check. You can either type this out with me or copy and paste the code found on the top of page 15 in your exercise guide to create that map. I'm going to delete all of the placeholder text and then create the map using the map function. The keys of this map should correspond to the names of the inputs in your agent. So that will be onboarding case. And the values should be process variables or expression you might write directly within this expression editor. We have a process variable already configured in our process model that we can pass to this map. So I'm going to expand my process variables dropdown on the left-hand side of my screen and find that onboarding case process variable and select it to insert that reference to my process variable. Once again, you can always copy and paste this line of code from page 15 in your exercise guide. Once you have that in there, click Save and Close. We have finished configuring the inputs for this node, and we'll move on to the outputs. So click over to that Outputs tab. Here you'll see 3 default outputs that exist on the Execute AI Agent Smart Service node: Agent Outputs, Run Summary, and Run ID. We'll be saving each of these to a corresponding process variable. So first I'll select Agent Outputs by clicking on the name, then move over to the right-hand side of my screen and use the drop-down next to Target to select the corresponding Agent Outputs process variable. And I'll do that 2 more times for Run Summary and Run ID. Before you click OK to close this configuration, you can just click around to those outputs to make sure that they are all saved to a corresponding process variable. Then we can all click OK to close the configuration for this process model node. The agent outputs are saved in a map to make it easy to index into those outputs and grab the specific items we configured in our AI agent. We'll be doing that in the next node, which is a script task. Go ahead and double-click on that Parse Agent Outputs script task node. We'll go straight to the Data tab and then Outputs. We'll be creating 2 custom outputs here. One to grab that escalate to supervisor Boolean flag, and one to grab the escalation justification. So I'll start by clicking on New Custom Output, then move over to the right side to edit the expression that determines the value of this output. The code for this output can be found at the top of page 16 if you're a fan of copy and paste. If you want to type it out with me, you can expand the Process Variables menu on the left-hand side of your screen and select Agent Outputs. Then use the dot operator to index into that map, and then type out the name of that output, escalate to supervisor. We'll do the same thing for the escalation justification output. Save and close, click New Custom Output, and edit the expression. Once you have that code in there, you can click Save and Close. And now we have to store both of these outputs into corresponding process variables. So starting with escalation justification, I'll use the drop-down next to target to select the corresponding process variable. And I'll do the same thing for the escalate to supervisor output. So it might be worth it to just double check both of those custom outputs are being saved into a process variable. Once you've got that, you can click OK, and we're ready to publish this process model. So publish this process model by navigating to the File menu in the upper left-hand corner of your screen and finding the option for Save and Publish. This process model will execute our AI agent. Then the script task will parse the outputs of that agent and grab those two specific outputs we're looking for. Then we'll proceed to the supervisor approval XOR gateway. This gateway will look at the value of that escalate to supervisor Boolean flag. If it's false, then we don't need any human intervention and we can just complete the process model. If it's true, then we will pass this process to a user input task that gets assigned to members of our IT supervisors group. They'll be able to quickly complete this task because both of our agents will provide all of the necessary context that they need to make a decision on the recommended hardware package. Once they approve or reject that recommendation, we'll update the onboarding case appropriately, and the process will finish. Keep this tab open. You can come back to it to monitor any instances of this process model. But now we'll take a look at how our employees at NextGen can kick off this agent run from an Appian site. So let's all meet back in our objects list in Appian Designer. Then if you navigate to the waffle menu in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see that there is an equipment provisioning site in that list. Go ahead and select that, and you'll be taken to a dashboard that our HR specialists will use to kick off these agentic workflows. So here we can see all of the employees with the IT provisioning status. In order to connect our agent to this site, we would have to configure a button that kicks off that process model. That button, working with the process model, will ensure that the appropriate inputs get passed to our agent. I'd like to show you an example of what that process model looks like once it's been run. I have an example up here. In any process model, you can access the process instances from the toolbar. So here I have a process instance for an employee named Yuki, who is a senior software engineer based in Seattle. And she had a request in her onboarding case for a Windows laptop, even though the standard hardware package for her role is a Mac. She also is assigned to a special project that requires a very pricey piece of hardware. And so when the agent was analyzing all of these details, it had to escalate the case to approve that pricey request for that project, as well as her personal preferences. If we drill into the process details for this case, we can see that input onboarding case detail, as well as see the outputs returned by our agent, including the run ID, which we could then use if we go back to the monitor tab in our agent to see that step-by-step reasoning. We can also see a nice run summary returned by the agent, and then see the escalation details. Our employees at NextGen can then review the details of these completed processes by navigating to our employees who have already been onboarded. If we open up Fatima's case, we can see that her case was also escalated because she requested 3 monitors, which is outside of company policy. The supervisor was able to quickly determine the appropriate package for her by using the context provided by both of our agents and determine that she should only be provisioned 2 monitors. So please feel free to drill into all of these different employee records. Feel free to cross-reference the results of their onboarding cases with the documents that we have in this application. You can see those if you navigate to the Documents tab to make sure that our agent is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Let's review what we've learned. So we saw how you can create an AI agent in Appian Designer by providing instructions tools, inputs, and outputs. We then saw how simple it was to test that AI agent in a controlled environment. And then with a few steps, we were able to integrate that AI agent into an existing process model for our next-gen employees to then take advantage of. In your exercise guide, on the final page, there is a list of resources that you can use to continue your Appian AI learning journey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of new and exciting features coming out, not only for AI agents, but also across the product. So please attend as many Appian World events as possible to see demonstrations of those really exciting features. Congratulations, you have completed this workshop. You created your first Appian AI agent. Thank you so much for all of your hard work, and we'll be walking around the room to take any questions as you have. Thank you so much.